Hello, hello, hello. Check.
2023, beginning at 5 p.m. in the middle school library, 678 Success Drive. The live stream and recording of the meeting will be available for viewing on the district YouTube channel. The subject to be discussed or considered upon which any formal action may be taken or listed below. Items do not be taken in the same order as shown on this meeting notice. Unless removed from the consent agenda, items identified within the consent agenda will be acted on at one time. Roll call. Board Manager Terry. Present. Board Manager Elders. Present. Board Manager Johnson. All three board managers are present. We do have a quorum. Please stand for the pledge and remain standing for a moment of silence. I don't know why I did that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Public comment?
There were none posted.
Thank you, Adam.
Board President Johnson, this evening, we do have to have a public comment section regarding the 2015-2016, 2016-2017, 2017-2018, 2018-2019, and 2019-2020 TEA status of accreditation. Previously, the status was not accredited. However, due to the success of our students and teachers on our 2022 accountability rating, the state has retroactively changed our rating from not accredited revoked to accredited probation. So Marlin ISD now has never been a non-accredited school district forever. So are there any public comments on that? Or Ms. Richardson, feel free to put it on the front page. You know, I ain't mad at you. Yes, ma'am. So the official terminology for all of those years would be accreditation probation opposed to revoked. And it's just what that means to the students of the class of 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. Now their diplomas are fully accredited.
Good evening, Board President Johnson, members of the board. Tonight, Texas Lone Star Governor Student of the Month, Alondra Alvarado. She is a senior at Marlin High School. Alondra is a National Honor Society member who also plays basketball and is a member of the Sounds of Thunder Band. Alondra recently returned from Chicago presenting research she has been working on all year in conjunction with a Baylor doctoral student. Alondra is a vital part of the campus as she contributes in many ways, including serving as an office aide, tutoring classmates, and serving whenever the opportunity presents itself. Our Lone Star Governor Student of the Month, Alondra Alvarado. You want to accept this on her behalf, Principal Inslee?
Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next, we have our Lone Star Governors Teacher of the Month, Mr. Brandon Mugridge. He is an outstanding Bulldog. Along with being our special education teacher at Marlin High School, Coach Mugridge is the head soccer coach and assistant football coach. Coach Mugridge can be found attending classes and helping all students to be successful. He coordinates meetings on campus and ensures students are being served properly. Coach Mugridge is an intricate part of the Bulldog family. Let's welcome and congratulate Coach Mugridge, Lone Star Governors Teacher of the Month. Thank you. Next, Marlin ISD Employee of the Month, Mrs. Elise Hughes Weatherspoon was born in Marlin ISD. She left at an early age due to being in a military family. After traveling the world with her parents, they retired, and she ended up finishing her high school years in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Mrs. Weatherspoon came back to Marlin to help her mother. After returning to Marlin, she met her husband, Derek Weatherspoon, to whom she has been married for 24 years. She has 7 kids and 21 grandkids, 11 of them currently enrolled at Marlin Elementary. Thank you for that contribution. Mrs. Weatherspoon worked for the Texas Department of Criminal Justice for 20 years at a maximum security unit before retiring. After retiring in 2017, she came to Marlin Elementary to work as a substitute teacher. After substituting for a year, she decided that she wanted to become a teacher's aide working with the 4th and 5th grade students. After working as a TA for 3 years, Mrs. Weatherspoon accepted her current position of Marlin Elementary School receptionist. In addition to her role, Mrs. Hughes also supports the campus ELAR department through interventions and in-class support, and she organizes and coordinates the campus events. Let's congratulate our Marlin ISD Employee of the Month, Mrs. Elise Hughes Weatherspoon. Thank you. Here you go.
Congratulations to all the winners today. At this time, we're going into closed session. Pursuant to Texas Government Code, Section 551.074, deliberation of personnel matters. The time is 5:08. We're in closed session. We're back in open session at 5:43. Next on the agenda is superintendent report.
Good evening, Board President Johnson, members of the board. Tonight we'll begin with the bond 2022 update by Mr. Jesse Bustamante.
Good afternoon, Board President Johnson, members of the board, Dr. Henson. The district continues to have meaningful conversations with all of our stakeholders and vendors just to ensure a successful project delivery for our bond projects. Our next bond advisory meeting will be Monday, May 15th at 6:30 following our board meeting. A few updates for Legion Field Phase 1. For track and turf, we're bringing that vendor tonight for your consideration for approval. They will start tearing up the track and football field in late April, and we're hopeful construction will begin in May and propose to finish this project by August. Moving on to the field house, we will bring that vendor information on May 15th for consideration for your approval. Renovations for that project will start in June, and we've approved the first scope of work for that project, and we will now begin phase 2 of that project. Stadium concession stand, we'll bring that vendor information on May 15th for consideration for approval. Those renovations will also start in June. We've also approved the first scope of work, and we will now move on to phase 2 of that project. Building demolition, we will bring that vendor information on May 15th for consideration for your approval. Demolition will begin after the abatement is done. We're still working on the abatement for the old field house. We've also drafted the first scope of work for that project, and demolition is proposed to be complete by July. This is just a visual of the demolition project. The items that are circled or outlined in red are the buildings that will be demolished, our ticket booth, the concession stand, and our old field house. Are there any questions? Moving on, extra and co-curricular activities are the key ingredients to a well-rounded education. These programs cultivate character, leadership, and valuable life skills that go beyond the classroom. Key strategic measure 5.1 is promotion of extra and co-curricular activities. We are measuring this by our co-curricular club fair days. Program objective is to have 1 club fair day per semester. Target completion is May 6, 2023. We're currently on target to meet our program objective. Deliverables from our last meeting: create social media posts for Facebook and Twitter, also to create a flyer to promote the upcoming fair day. Both of those items were completed on December of 2022. Some immediate needs going forward: communication with parents via social media, communication with students, and then increased participation for the fair days. Some key takeaways, path going forward: we need to create a social media post and create flyers for our upcoming fair day that's coming in May. Actual date is May 6th. Are there any questions? Moving on to key strategic measure 5.2, offerings based on student interest. We're measuring this by our student interest survey. Program objective is to increase offerings for extra and co-curricular activities. Target completion is May of 2023. We're currently exceeding our goal for this key strategic measure. Deliverables from our last meeting were to increase sponsors. We completed that, and then to create 2 new offerings. We met that, Cooking Club and Ladies of Distinction. Immediate needs going forward: increased student participation, and then also our club sponsors. Key takeaways going forward: we need to increase our sponsors and then create 2 new offerings. Target completion for those 2 is December of 2023. Are there any questions? For all grades. Yes, ma'am. Oh, the cooking one specifically? Elementary. Yes, ma'am. And if you go on our Twitter page, there's actually a picture from the elementary of the cooking club. Yes, ma'am. Moving on to key strategic measure 5.3, positive brand identity for extra and co-curricular activities. We're measuring this by our marketing tool audit. Program objective is to examine the district's promotional environment. Target completions May of 2023. For this key strategic measure, we're currently slightly off track just because we haven't been able to get access to a billboard. That was one of our big goals. We're still working on getting access to a billboard on the highway. But deliverables from our last meeting, print advertising, TV advertising. Dr. Henson does a very good job of TV advertising for the entire district, so we're definitely meeting that goal. Immediate needs going forward, print advertising, TV advertising, and then reaching all of our stakeholders. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Next, we will have Vision 2025, Key Strategic Measure 6.2 by Mr. Adam Lejeune.
Board President Johnson, members of the board, Dr. Henson, thank you. As we continue to increase the number and quality of programs that we're bringing in for our students, it becomes more and more important to be intentional with how we keep track of them and how we get them ready for everybody as we go into the new school year. So I'm presenting the Key Strategic Measure 6.2, which is that all of our students are enrolled in their education programs prior to the first day of school. I'm tracking this internally via a roster readiness spreadsheet. Here's a sample from our spreadsheet. It's just basically a layout showing how everything is rostered, whether there is some manual follow-up work that has to be done, how it rolls over every year, and what platform we do the rostering through. And just since the beginning of this year, 2023, January, we've already rostered these 6 new programs: MyOn, MyPath, Paper, Elevation, Zello, and College Bridge. If you've been keeping up in the board books every week, you've seen me mention these products, beginning rostering this product, continued rostering for the product, finalize the product. So it does take a while to get going. And that is actually one of our key issues or needs, is that the academic department or other departments continue doing a good job letting us know early whenever they have programs that need to be rostered through the technology department. It really, really helps us out to have an accurate or enough time to take care of that. And then the most important one, however, is that the data turnover date for PEIMS data, since we have a short summer and a long school year, that data turnover date is very important that we hit those times and that there's no delays. So accurate PEIMS keeping to continue to maintain that is what we are looking for. Most products do roll over with minimal input. We do track the ones that require additional input with that tracker. And I really do appreciate onboarding new products in March and April so that for August 1st, we can have kids in the system and ready to go. Are there any questions about this key strategic measure? Thank you.
Next, we'll have the 2023 Spring Star Assessment interim data.
Good evening, Board President Johnson, members of the board, Dr. Henson. Victory belongs to the most persevering. Another quote that we live by is that if the plan isn't working, you change the plan and not the goal. So I'm proud to present our interim data for the spring. So we'll start off with Marlin Elementary, and before I even get into it, you will see gains across the board in many, many areas. If you remember, I've been up here before and I've told you that we were going to make some improvements, and they did. So I'm extremely proud of this campus at this time under the leadership of Principal Jefferson. And so here is our fall to spring comparison in our interim data. A reminder that our goal for approaches, meets, and masters is 70, 55, and 20. And so we are climbing toward that. We had gains across the board in reading, third grade reading, fourth grade reading, and in fifth grade reading, with fourth grade reading trending closest to our goal. For math, we had gains across the board as well, with math, fourth grade math and fifth grade math already now exceeding the goal of our end-of-year goal of 70%. Here are our meets numbers, again, gains in both in all three, third, fourth, and fifth grade reading. We do still have some work to do to get to that 55%. Here's our meet number for mathematics, with our fifth grade numbers being closest to that 55 goal. And our master's numbers, while there were, slight gains in our master's numbers, we understand across the board that that's an area that we are going to continue to work towards. And here are our math numbers, again, with increases across the board from fall to spring interim.
So good afternoon, again, Board President Johnson, members of the board. At this time, I would like to publicly commend and recognize Principal Jefferson just on her leadership and on her hard work for working with the faculty and staff. To see data that has gains across the board in approaches, meets, and masters for every grade level and for every content area, that needs to be applauded, and I thank you for your leadership.
Thank you, Dr. Henson. Marlin Middle School. And so we'll start again off with reading. We have gains across the board in 6th, 7th, and in 8th grade. And that was phenomenal. If you look at those 8th grade numbers, when we started off in the fall, we added some holy water and some prayers, and they had giant gains. And so kudos to Principal Washington for stepping in and ensuring that reading was increasing. We had a slight dip in Math 6, just 1%, so you're talking about, well, actually less than one student, and a slight gain in Math 7, and then gains in Math 8. Again, you had a dip in Reading 6 for meets, gains in reading for 7th grade and in 8th grade, and gains across the board in meets for math. Again, we're continuing. We had an issue in 6th grade. We had dips across the board in approaches, meets, and masters, but gains in reading for 7th grade, and a slight gain in reading for 8th grade for masters. And here are your numbers for math. Again, we had gains in Math 6 and Math 7. We flatlined in Math 8. Marlin High School in English and Math. A reminder that we take 4 tests this year because we're not taking biology, so you'll see comparisons of all of our 4 tests. Starting off with Algebra 1, English 1, and English 2, there were decreases across the board in approaches. A slight increase in Algebra 1 and English 2 for meets, and a decrease in English 1. And slight increases in the mastery grade level, with flatlining in English 1 and 1% in English 2 for masters. We extracted science and social studies performance because these are the 2 tests that did not have a fall interim. TEA did not release a fall interim, so they only took it once. And so you're not going to see a fall to spring comparison, but you will see a campus to campus comparison. So for science, the only 2 campuses that have science are Marlin Elementary and Marlin Middle School. And as you can see, we have lots of work to do in the area of science. In social studies, the only 2 campuses that have social studies tests will be Marlin Middle School for 8th grade and Marlin High School for 11th grade, with 11th grade at the approaches level exceeding the goal of 70%. So what are we going to do? MES, they had phenomenal gains. They are going to just continue working their plan. In both reading and math, they created plans in January. They're going to continue to implement with fidelity. A proven campus administrator is going to step in, or has already stepped in, to take over some of the teaching in 5th grade science. And we did have updates to intervention student groups based on the data. For Marlin Middle School, we have started pulling targeted students, and if you notice, both social studies and science were an area of opportunity. We have begun pulling them, 8th graders. They're mostly in athletics, and we're off season at this time, and so they're pulling them during first period to work in a specialized setting. Dr. Henson and myself are now rotating in between 7th and 8th grade math, giving them instruction every single day to targeted students. And we have a proven campus administrator that is directly supporting 6th grade reading. For Marlin High School, we have a campus administrator who is team teaching in both English 1 and English 2, and the Algebra 1 schedules have been reconfigured for mastered skill. All students are instructed by the main teacher of record daily. Previously, students were rotating between the main teacher and their lab teacher, but we have grouped the students all with their main teacher to receive instruction that is extremely targeted and specific to their needs based on this data. Are there any questions? Well, while I'm up here bragging, I've just expected you to ask, Ms. Ayler, so I had it for you already, and I'm so sad you didn't ask, but at Marlin Elementary, for our LEP population, they performed above their peers in both 4th and 5th grade math and in both 3rd and 5th grade reading. So I want to give another round of applause to Marlin Elementary. Thank you.
Board President Johnson, members of the board, every year school districts plan their budget and propose revenue by looking at local taxes and contributions by the state. For our local taxes, the Falls County Appraisal District dictates the values of the properties here in Falls County and in Marlin ISD. On the left, you see from the comptroller's website, and I know it's a lot of numbers, but it explains the value of the properties here in Falls County. On the far left, all the way down, circled, you see a local value of $369,699,508. However, the comptroller in the state says that Falls County has appraised our values too low, and the value in their opinion should actually be $406,406,574. This does impact the amount of aid that the state provides to the district. For instance, Marlin ISD has collected taxes for $369 million. The state is saying you should have collected taxes for $406 million. The state is not going to make up that difference in the gap of approximately $37 million. So our state aid is being based off of the state giving us $7,328,572, opposed to what we're saying the state should be giving us $7,787,000 based off Falls County's local values. So the difference in revenue at stake for the 22-23 school year, as Marlin ISD is seeing not receiving revenue of $458,770. We have hired new tax attorneys, Purdue and Brandon, who also work with all the school districts here in Falls County. Their plan is to work with the comptroller to really make sure what can we do to close the gap between what the Falls CAD is saying our values are and what the comptroller is saying our values are, so the difference in revenue at stake is not $458,000. This is not a function of the Marlin Independent School District. This is a direct function of the Falls County Appraisal District and the Texas Comptroller. Are there any questions?
Good evening, Board President Johnson, members of the board. Board workshops are important to bring to the board and our stakeholders to ensure that we keep you informed on how we are making decisions about allocation of our resources and prioritizing the needs of our students. Tonight's budget workshop will just discuss some of the additional financial considerations that we make in crafting our budget and making our plan. Grant management, bond management, property tax values, as Dr. Henson just reported on, and legislative updates. So with grants again are an important funding source for public school districts. We do in Marlin ISD rely on some of our grants to help support a wide range of programming. So this is how we enhance the programming and initiatives that we provide that benefits our students, teachers, and our community as a whole. Just to give you a glimpse of the grant funding that we've received, and grants that really cover our instructional and operational support, we are slated for the upcoming year to have slightly over $1.5 million in grants. And in your board book, I've listed some of those grants that make up for that amount. We also, for instructional development, and that's for development of our teachers, professional development, enhancing some of our core curricular areas, we're estimated to receive approximately $900,000. And then for parental and community engagement, we have been awarded the Community Partnership Grant to continue those efforts for $460,000.
And Board President Johnson, members of the board, one thing to mention is that under Dr. Parker's leadership as our Chief Operating Officer, this is approximately $2.8 million of additional revenue when it comes to grants. And so herself, Mrs. Edwards, and the team, they've done a phenomenal job in managing the grants. Despite what was shared on our last slide of the revenue of $458,000, because we want to make sure that we receive all our revenue for the district. But Dr. Parker and Mrs. Edwards mainly have done a great job in ensuring that despite any shortfall, our children are still going to be educated, there is support, and there will be engagement for our parents and for our community.
Next, also that's new on the horizon, our bond passed, yay. And so we have received our bond funds, and just a reminder to our stakeholders that for our high school as well as security upgrades at the elementary and middle campus, we have $24.5 million. And for Proposition B, which is our Legion Field renovations and construction, $7.5 million. The budget implications with that is that now we have to ensure that we are managing these projects at the best value for the district. We definitely want to give the community what they're asking for, and so there's strategies that will be put into play budget-wise that will ensure that. Bond fund management, I'll talk about that a little later in terms of investments. How do we grow the fund so that we can get some of the extra bells and whistles that the community wants? And then debt management, we are now in preparation for the debt, as our first debt payment will be February 2024. And so how are we managing that and communicating with the local tax collection office? Just to highlight again, too, just in terms of the budget, we do plan to not only be aggressive in how we maximize our funds, but also in how we manage and take care of our debt. And so just a quick reminder that we are looking for this Copperhead Solar Project money to start rolling in to help pay down a considerable amount of that and maximize that so that we don't have to take the bond payments to the full maturity of the note.
And one thing to even just think about, I showed you even on the comptroller side board and community, $406 million is all of Falls County's values. Well, there are 110 million of it, 25%. So the Copperhead Solar Agreement is going to be a huge savings to our community because they have to attribute that percent of taxes. So in essence, I'm glad that we were very conservative.
Yes.
Here it says 23%, it's actually now 25%. So the tax bill will now go from $40 to $38.75.
And just a reminder, again, just always bringing it to the forefront of our funding structure, of course, as was shared earlier, as local share increases, that state share decreases. So we're in a constant battle of keeping our eye on that and looking at our property tax values and studying that and meeting with our attorneys in the appraisal districts. Also keeping an eye on our attendance projections and the information that's actually submitted through our PEEM system. Dr. Henson did show you this, and so I won't go deep into that, but I do want to say that another level of importance for budgeting as it relates to that is to do conservative budgeting strategies so that we can at least budget for what we know we're going to receive and not necessarily for what we would actually be receiving. So we kind of can budget lower so that we don't, that we can plan accordingly and don't run the risk of running out of funds. So highlighted here in our plans as we look, these numbers may shift some, but we do plan our local tax revenue on what our tax appraisal office says our properties are valued. However, when you look at the state revenue, it would have anticipated, as Dr. Henson shared, based on what they said, 7.3, but we still budget slightly lower just so that we can try to make up that cushion to not have to pay back the state at the turn of the new school year. So just some key takeaways. We continue to analyze all of our systems, including the recruitment and retention of staff, our savings and efficiencies, how we're budgeting, our budgeting processes, and then just some key legislative bills to watch as it relates to this. There's actually a Senate bill that's out that's looking at that state to local discrepancy and how they're going to try to assist districts with that to prevent that. So just some key legislation there for you all to keep an eye on as it relates to public school finance. And our next board budget workshop is May 15th. Any questions? Efficient school finance is also critical in providing our students with the resources that they need to succeed. So for March 2023, I'd like to present to you our financials. In the general fund, we have spent a little over 80%, or we've received a little over 80% of our revenue. I do want to highlight some of our expenditures. Although we do spend the bulk of our funds in instruction and operations, I do want to note that this month we did not spend $771,852 in instructional resources. These are budgeting book balancing entries, so these are accounting entries. Periodically through the year, our partners at Region 12, with the help of our Region 12 accountant, go in and help us balance out our budgets. And so this is no cash out to the district. It is just merely recording entries as it relates to payroll accruals. It's a whole accounting thing, but it is to balance out the record. So we're actually not to the negative in our actual spending for the month. So I wanted to note that. Same applies to food service. We have received close to 75% of our revenue. Again, this is a reporting accounting entry to just show the balancing of our accruals for payroll, so there's not actually cash out. So we actually are to the good in our food service budget as well. We do now also report interest in sinking since we have been awarded with a bond. However, the 1,770 you see is residual from debt from far before, so it's not actually reflective of current bond proceeds. And the $15 credit that you see, the bank owed us a refund on a charge that they charged. So I try to get all the dollars and all the cents, $15. Next, in our construction account, you will notice that the budget, we did budget the amount of bond funds that we were to receive. We've moved those funds into a text pool account to gain interest, but you'll note here in March, we are moving funds over as we are starting to complete some of the projects and begin payments on those. And so you will see money coming in each month, but we're moving funds over to cover some expenditures that we'll start having with our bond projects. And then lastly, you will also see The investments, just want to note that in our text pool for our general local maintenance, we did earn interest in $11,861.37. For our construction account, we earned $125,269.20. And then you will see a breakdown of our funds that are in our local Cadence Bank. And so you will see a glimpse of all of our cash on hand. In your board book, you do have the full list of check registry for the month of March, but here I just showed an excerpt just to give you all a glimpse of the checks that have gone out for the month of March. Any questions? Ma'am? For the Oh, for 0% for state revenue? Yes, not today.
Board President Johnson, members of the board, state revenue for child nutrition is different because it's typically funded through the federal government through reimbursements. It's not typical to wait till April.
No.
because the school year is almost over. So what we'll do, we'll have to get with Region 12 in terms of why we made that budget projection of $15,000. At any time, the state will typically settle up with this in September or October if the funds are not received by our June 30th deadline. But typically, it does not take this long. However, child nutrition is traditionally a function of the federal government.
And I will follow up to get that question addressed. Each year, we engage with an audit firm to ensure the accuracy of our financial record processes. Last year, we engaged with Singleton Clark and Company PC for our annual audit. This year, we're presenting them again. We would like to use the same company for the audit for our current year that we're in. So they're going to come out and begin that audit process with the board's approval beginning in the next 2 weeks or so. So they'll start looking at our current year records just to ensure that everything is straight. And that is going to come at a cost of $33,500, which needs the board's approval as well. Any questions? So Marlin ISD, as the board, as the governing body of a taxing unit, the taxpayers must seek board approval in order to approach the tax assessor collector's office to review and potentially consider any request to waive penalties and interest. And so on January 31st, as you all remember, the city and the district was closed down due to inclement weather. And so that impacted several of our city offices, including the tax assessor's office. The Falls County Tax Office did not waive any penalties and interest and didn't extend the delinquency date for taxpayers. And so again, we had several taxpayers call to inquire if we could approach the board to ask if the board would grant the tax assessor's office with the ability to review individual case-by-case documentation to see if in fact they are entitled to a waiver of the interest and the penalties. Many were claiming that because of the mail delay, it was actually not received on time, thus getting a penalty and interest for those that waived out. That's backed by the Texas Tax Code 33.011, and I do have that in your board book as well. Just to note, this again is not you saying, yes, you're waiving all the penalties and interest. This is you giving the tax assessor collector the ability to review their documentation, and if they see that that is justifiable, then it grants them the ability to waive our portion of the penalty and interest. Any questions?
Board President Johnson, members of the board, With this being new to Marlin ISD, Dr. Parker did do her research and noticed that there are school districts in McLennan County and school boards in McLennan County that have also had similar issues as well.
Yes.
So we wanted to make sure that we were within the laws of the tax code and kind of follow the guidance of McLennan County being the largest county in our region.
Yes. Thank you. So not only does the school calendar serve as a reminder of important events, but it also serves as a tool for the implementation of our instructional programs. We did present to you the calendar option. Of course, just a reminder that the superintendent did appoint a calendar committee. We've held several meetings, and that committee included employees, parents, and students that have continuously provided us feedback on our calendar and our calendar process. You do have an example in your book of our calendar committee, which comprised of each district level employees and campus as well as parents and students. Recently, we had you approve option A, which was the 180 instructional days to start on August 7th, 2023, and end on May 23rd, 2024. However, we had other discussion and other recommendations from some of our stakeholders to reconsider an additional option, which is the 4-day week calendar. We've also, in attending several meetings in our region, have noticed that many of our surrounding districts are starting to consider, and some have even begun to adopt a 4-day week calendar. So we did hold an additional town hall at the high school, and the response was overwhelming that they really wanted us to present to the board tonight for approval a 4-day week calendar. Dr. Henson did present this option at our prior board meeting, so the highlights again is that it will not compromise the 180 days. We will still go to school for 180 days, so that's the same instructional time. All it does is just push back just a couple of days, the first day of school to July 31st, and then the last day of school push out slightly to June 7th, 2024. The community was also made aware of accountability updates where the state is not even allowing districts to certify diplomas until sometime in June, and so it really aligns with some of the state changes that are on the horizon. Again, in this calendar, our philosophy is a strong start and strong finish. So if you take a second look, you'll notice in the month of August, when we come back from Christmas break in January, and then when we end school in May, there are no Fridays off. And so that is to start strong. Okay, you go home for Christmas, you come back, another strong start, and then you finish strong. Also, our students will attend school the first Friday of every month as well. And so it just offers an additional option that we are presenting to you tonight to approve. Any questions?
(2023, 2024) employment contracts.
Board President Johnson, members of the board, Dr. Henson, contracts are important to a school district, enabling successful relationships and defining the terms of engagement. There are various types of contracts that cater to different needs of the district. Looking at our contract employment timeline, we're still in the middle section of it. We're bringing all of our contracts to the board today for consent. April 24th, we will email our contracts out through Frontline for employees to sign, and the deadline for the employees is May 15th. As I presented at our last board meeting, these are our contract types. So we have probationary and term. We have 5 contract types for each probationary and for term. Are there any questions on our contracts or our contract types? Moving on, Picture a state-of-the-art field with a stunning track and a sleek track, a stunning turf and a sleek track, the kind that inspires our students, student athletes to turn their potential into performance. A competitive field proposal was released on March 27th, seeking proposals from vendors to provide stadium track improvements and new synthetic turf field for Legion Field. Taking a look at our track and our field is desperately in need of a new track and a new football field, so we're definitely excited about this project moving forward. The scope of work for the vendor, if approved tonight, is removing the existing track and grass field, installing synthetic turf, installing a drainage system, completing concrete work, and then installation of the 400-meter track for regulation, and then 8-lane track, as well as the high jump areas, long and triple jump, and the pole vault runway area. A timeline for the CSP, it was released on March 27th. On April 13th, the proposals were due, and on April 13th as well, the selection committee met to select the vendor that we're bringing forth today for your approval to move forward and negotiate with this vendor. The vendor we selected is Symmetry Sports Construction. Their headquarters in Mount Pleasant, Texas. They were founded in 2010, and they've built several fields in Texas. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Investment broker dealers, Dr. Stacy Parker Knight.
Okay. Good evening again, Board President Johnson, members of the board. As I talked earlier about how we are planning and we're managing our funds with Fidelity, part of that is investing those funds, as I shared with you earlier, some of the investments that we are engaging in. The Texas Government Code, Chapter 2256, does say that if we are making those investments, we must bring to the board, at least annually, the opportunity for you to review, revise, and adopt a list of qualified brokers. We've listed the qualified brokers in your board book, in which we are partnering with a company, TCG, to help educate us and inform us on those safe typical investments that we can do to, again, just maximize our funds, so again that we can have more funds to do some of the projects that we want to do. And so I'm asking tonight for your approval of that broker list. Are there any questions?
And this concludes my superintendent's report. Thank you.
We have a motion, do we have a second? I second. We have a second, we have a motion and second to further consider agenda. Any questions? If not, we ready to vote?